I'm Jerril Rechter, the Executive Director of Leadership Victorian. Today on Business Spectator, we're speaking to Simon Illingworth, who's going to talk to us about ethics and leadership. Simon, welcome to Business Spectator.
Thanks.
The first question I'd love to ask you is, what makes you a leader?
I don't know. I think it's more about people, I guess, to some extent following. I don't think I'm not a sports person that's standing on a podium with a big premiership cup above me. My view on leadership is probably different to others. I think it's more about, figuratively speaking, about being born with a baton in your hand and you have a choice as to how far you can take it. And I think when you've got that sort of situation and you're mentoring others, not necessarily to be a copy or a clone of yourself, actually to try and get other people to be better than you. And so I see that more as a leader's role than particularly, a person of some sort of status or a CEO or something like that.
You've been through some really difficult crucible moments in your life. Can you tell us about that experience and what leadership lesson you learnt?
I appeared on Australian Story at the end of a fairly turbulent police career. I appeared as a whistleblower. At that point in time, I had numerous threats. I'd been bashed. I was investigating and giving evidence against crooked police. I was carrying a gun 24 hours a day, and I had security doors, security fences, video surveillance. And I guess in a way, most people, I suspect, would probably quit. I don't know what it is, but for some reason, I just thought, well, if I quit, then I leave it to someone else, and I wasn't prepared to do that.
And how do you maintain your integrity under such pressure?
The pressure really came from a really strange kind of culture. The police force was I guess, to some extent a little bit out of control in that loyalty worked its way up, which it does in normal policing, because, I mean, let's face it, on any given day, I'd be standing there with a sledgehammer about to hit someone's door in to do a raid, and I didn't have a firearm, so I'm then relying upon others behind me. And so loyalty does get quite high. In our situation, the environment in Victoria at that time was, there were numerous armed robberies, 1,000 a year when I first joined. There were police shooting criminals in Victoria more so than anywhere else. There were police being shot, and so this sort of pushed loyalty to an extent where it was, number one, it was loyalty no matter what or else. And so that you enter the police force, and when you have that situation, unfortunately, people that are prone to corruption or are indeed corrupt then just take advantage of that loyalty, so no one will say anything against them.
And tell us about ethical leadership in your own words, what you think ethical leadership is.
Ethics and leadership should go hand in glove, but inevitably, for whatever reason, people these days don't necessarily tie them together. We have numerous leaders, some around the world, and some of them simply aren't ethical. That doesn't necessarily mean they're not a leader. They're just not the sort of leader that we want. Ethics, to me, draws, well, in a difficult ethical dilemma, which no doubt in business they happen all the time, and as I see these days in my business, I think people have to draw upon the courage and what they know to be right. And the only way that we can do that is to actually stop every now and again and ask ourselves, who am I? What do I value, and what are some of my principles? And so that we can assess our lives at that point in time, and if we're going astray, then bring it back on track.
And what do you see as some of the ethical challenges currently facing Australia, particularly as you go around with the work that you do?
Well, I think some of the ethical challenges, probably for all of us, is, you know, we're living in this sort of in a time where the two bookends of many different topics have a say, and that may well be on one hand a mining company, and then the greenie movement on the other. And if at any stage, if either side are lying or not telling the truth or exaggerating, then you have a major problem. And so and I do believe that the current situation with, let's say, the carbon tax, the reason why it's so difficult to sell is because no one's trusting anyone, and trust is such a big thing.
And social media is really becoming a major issue for businesses today. What is your view on the ethics of social media in the workplace?
Well, I mean, that's a difficult thing, because all of a sudden you've got a business saying, we would like you to sit under this particular umbrella, our code of ethics and so on. What you do in your outside life is your business to a large extent. However, the social media is interacting in both. And so that people are going to work and then using Facebook. Anything that I guess is not edited, because, you know, let's face it, newspapers have always been edited, and checks and balances have been done. There is no checks and balances in social media.
Recently there's been some articles in the New York Times and also in Harvard Review that relate to the concept that it's not all about you. In other words, we is much bigger than me. What's your view on that type of thinking?
Look, I tend to agree with that. I think one of the big things is that corporations these days have moved away from the kind of the policy and the procedure-driven leadership sort of seminars, and they're actually going deeper into the why. Why do we do this? And, you know, inevitably, if I give a keynote speech, I get asked the question, you know, Simon, was it all worth it? Well, my response to that is often, well, if you need to ask that question, you need to go down to a beach and watch a kid playing with a ball. You know, of course it's bloody worth it. To a large extent, I think that potentially that's what leadership is. It's saying it is about we, and it is also about why.
I know that you're a very keen surfer, and as someone that's interested in ethical leadership, I need you to answer this question honestly. Have you ever dropped in on anyone, and under which circumstances would you drop in on someone again?
Well, I mean, yes, I have, you know, unwittingly. One of the things though is that, you know, it's an interesting thing, surfing, because it is largely, I mean, it's not, there's no law that says that you can't drop in on someone else's wave or whatever. It's one of those kind of tribal things. It's a surfer's culture that you just don't do it. And generally, and particularly where I surf down in the southwest coast of Victoria, where it's massive surf, it's not only is it wrong, but it's bloody dangerous.
Simon, thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you.